Let's go. They gave us. All right. Well, those of you that came, first off, I'll introduce myself. My name is Anita Gibbons, formerly the manager of the Women and Men's Resource Center. You may never have heard of it. It's been around since 1969, and typically what we do is help students who are struggling with whatever they may be struggling to enter back into school. And that's kind of evolved into being now part of the Student Life Program and Psych Services, which I'm now the Director of Psych Services and Student Life and Student Health. And the services that we used to provide in the Women and Men's Center, I just want to get this out there, is still being provided. It's just being provided under different umbrellas in a little bit of a different way. And then we also work with former foster youth. So some of what I'm going to talk about today, I have somebody here that is probably the best at this of anybody you would ever meet. She's sitting right there. She used to be my assistant there, and now she's over here at LAC. And what we're going to talk about, what we used to do a lot of, and we still do, is students come to us in crisis. And students come to us with not always on the best behavior, and not always presenting themselves in a way that's going to make us want to just kind of throw out the red carpet and help them, because they oftentimes are difficult. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think that's about, because I think if we can kind of understand what is happening with our students, then that helps us to develop a strategy so that we can be, I think, more effective, at least what I have found, in a way to be more effective in de-escalating their behavior. When what I'm going to talk about doesn't work, then the next step is to write a conduct referral, and it goes to the office that Sylvia is now in, and it's a conduct matter. But sometimes we can prevent that from happening, and we can actually, I don't know if you heard the speaker this morning, but we can actually facilitate what she was talking about, and that in helping students to succeed and helping them to learn new ways to interact. So when I say, are you listening, what I'm saying is, are you listening for what might be really going on with the students so that you can work in a way that might, not always, might de-escalate. This is going to require some interaction, and it's a large group, but this really works best if you ask questions, because I'm going to give some principles, but I want us to kind of flush those principles out, and so that we can have some examples, because I teach best when I can use examples, so that it really makes the principles make more sense. So, but where we're going to start is we're going to start with we're going to talk about trauma, because what I'm really talking about is trauma, and I'm going to put it into the context that it will apply. And how does trauma affect us? Why is it important on a college campus? Why do we care about a person's pre-existing trauma on the campus? And how can we respond using a model that's called trauma-informed care? And trauma-informed care means that we're operating on information that we may understand about a pre-existing trauma that might exist. A lot of mights and ifs and that, but what we're really talking about is stress, stress-informed care. How can we deal with students under stress? How can we deal with situations of crisis and stress? So the first thing is to talk about trauma. And I want to say that trauma, the definition of trauma is an uncomfortable experience that triggers some kind of a flight-fight response, a stress reaction. What happens for all of us, and I'm going to explain a little bit about the brain in this process. Excuse me, what happens for all of us when we are in a position where we feel like something is being threatened or we're in danger, we have two ways of responding, fight or flight. That comes from the early person as the development of human beings, that when they felt like they were in danger, they were either ready to fight and defend themselves, or they were ready to run from whatever was threatening them. And so we have that natural instinctual part of us that is a fight-flight response when we feel like we're in danger. A trauma is an experience from the past that sticks in our mind and can create a reaction today. So sometimes we're not even sure of what that past experience is in our head. We aren't even totally conscious of the fact that it's there, but we will become aware of the emotional reaction that it triggers. And so oftentimes we'll just, like, what's going on here? What am I experiencing? And that can be from a previous experience. It can and usually does influence our relationships and our emotional responses, and we all have them. If you were in an automobile accident on the 405 freeway, and the police officer pulled you over and started giving you a really hard time, there was a response, law enforcement response, and they started giving you a really hard time. Well, even if they don't give you a really hard time, you're going to have a memory of that portion of the 405 freeway every time you travel down the 405. That's what I'm talking about. It sticks in your head. It could be an intersection. It can be a person. It could be a person that looks like the previous person. It can be an emotion that gets triggered. An example for me is I had a terrible, terrible 5th grade teacher. She was really mean. She'd make us go up on the board and do math problems, and if we got them wrong, it was not unusual for her to hit somebody with a ruler as punishment. I never got hit. I don't know why, because I didn't usually get them right. But I have anxiety every time I do math problems attached to my 5th grade math year. It's like suddenly my brain is like, it's not working correctly. And it took me years to finally put those two things together, that it's Miss Fulton. 5th grade. I can tell you what dress she was wearing. I can tell you the classroom, what it looked like. I can tell you what my friend who got hit with the ruler looked like. Her name was Connie. So I have that emotional reaction to anything that reminds me of that really terrifying for me experience in the 5th grade. That's a trauma. That's a stress reaction. It's a stress experience. So what happens for us is that we start to feel powerless when we're in a situation like that. We don't feel like we have control over what's happening to us and around us. We start to feel less than. We start to feel like we're just not adequate enough to do what we need to do to accomplish whatever tasks is before us. We start to really question our reality. And we start to question what's really happening around. Am I being accurate about this? And what happens, the increase in stress really does decrease our ability to problem solve and to really figure things out. We start to feel unheard and invalidated, and that may not be the case at all. It may not have anything to do with that. And we start to feel unsafe. And for some, that feeling of not feeling unsafe is really, that feeling of unsafe is really big. Now, some examples, I talked a little bit about the event that I experienced in the 5th grade, my math anxiety, which was the reason I had to have tutoring through statistics in order to get into graduate school. Wow. It did not end. Probably if a student comes in and says, can you help me with this math problem, I'm not going to be the one to do that. So it can be certain events in our life. We talked a little bit about that. And it can be certain aggressions. And I want to talk about an aggression as we're talking about diversity and we're talking about being really an inclusive campus. I want to talk about an aggression, a type of aggression that's called microaggressions. Has anybody in here ever heard of that? Microaggressions? Okay, student. All right. Well, microaggressions are something that is often not recognized but still pretty prevalent in a person's experience. A microaggression, they're often very subtle. They're often very commonplace. They could be derogatory statements that are just kind of a natural part of our life or our society, but they feel uncomfortable for the individual that's hearing it. They usually are racially connected or religion connected, or maybe they're sexual orientation connected. And the word micro attached to it isn't really comfortable for me because I think it's bigger than micro implies little. I think it's bigger than micro. But the whole idea behind a microaggression is that it's not a blatant, outlandish statement that's made to the person, but it's kind of a subtle invalidation of who they are. It's kind of a subtle insult about them, about their race, about their character, about their identity, whatever that identity might be. And an example was when Schwarzenegger called Democrats girly men. Now, what does that statement imply?
Lots of things. That girls aren't valid and valued.
Girls aren't valid and
That
valued.
they can't have any kind of anything feminine in their makeup at all.
Mhm.
They're bad.
Mhm. What else?
They shouldn't be taken seriously as opponents.
Shouldn't be taken seriously as opponents. And that's kind of an example. I mean, people were offended by it, but what were they offended by? And so really breaking out what were the components of the offense? What were the things that really made that an offensive statement? We hear that things like that when it's attached oftentimes to women, but it can also be attached to men. We hear it with sexual orientation or sexual identity. And there are statements that, when on the playground when the kids are saying, oh, that's so gay, and they're using it, well, I didn't mean it as bad, that's a microaggression. It's a statement that is saying that gay is not okay because they've just made that evaluation of that particular behavior and attached it to an identity. So there's a variety of ways that it can be communicated. There's also research that talks about what we call stereotype threat. And stereotype threat is the experience that individuals have. The research showed that when an individual has to identify their race prior to going in and taking a test, they will score more poorly on that test, or they will score poorly than they would if they didn't have to identify their race. And the reason is because they go in taking that test with already internalizing the things that were said about their race, and now they're suddenly internalizing that as they go in to take the test. It's called stereotype threat. The threat of being stereotyped about your race. The threat of being stereotyped about your identity. So there's a lot of power in identity and discrediting and invalidation and treating people as invisible. There's a lot of negative power. There's a lot of power and it decreases a person's ability to really respond in the most confident way. So when we look at stress, I think about a lot of these things. I can't always pinpoint which one is operating at that time, but I know that we're made up of all these things. Every single one of us in this room has something that we have heard said about something that we identify with that suddenly gives us this feeling in our stomach that, oh, I don't want them to know about that, whatever that might be. When we look at stress is an occurrence that is beyond one's ability to cope. What we all have developed over our lifetime is the ability to cope with different stressful situations, to survive, perseverance. When something bad happens, we draw from previous experiences and know that I'm going to be able to get beyond this and I'm going to be able to survive this because I have experiences telling me that I can do that. For many of us in our lifetime, we come to a place where we have so many things happening for us all at once that we don't have any more bags, more tricks in our bag in order to be able to move beyond that. We don't have any more of those coping mechanisms or strategies that are positive to move forward. Now, drugs and alcohol are a coping mechanism. It's not the most effective coping mechanism, but it is a coping mechanism. So I'm talking about the ability to cope and using positive coping mechanisms, things that will help our students succeed. So when I talk about stress, I'm talking about a person gets to a place where things are just piling up and they're just too big to cope with. So when we look at the impact of trauma, what we know is that trauma, when it happens, and I want you to think of trauma as being a stressor. I want you to move away from thinking of trauma as being catastrophic, although that does have an impact, of course. But I want you to think of it as being some smaller kinds of things that also may contribute to a student's behavior. And what happens with it, and we can't really measure how trauma impacts one person versus another, because something could happen to me and I'm going to react differently than if it happens to Sylvia. But what trauma does is it narrows the person's perspective. It constricts their ability to choose what they're going to do oftentimes, because the trauma has oftentimes eliminated options. So it's now suddenly constricted a person's ability to choose what they're going to do. Undermining their self-esteem. I should be able to handle this. How often have you heard, I should be able to handle this? I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be doing that. When I was doing therapy, I used to tell my clients, don't should on yourself. And I really believe that should is a really powerful word that puts us in a box and puts us in a corner. And it's kind of like, it doesn't allow for our choices. It takes away stress, trauma or stress takes away control of creating, and it creates a sense of helplessness and hopelessness. And so what we see is that students really aren't able to look beyond and look and see what the plan is to get themselves out of some of these situations. There's a definite connection between a person's past experience and today's behavior, and that's what this workshop is all about. Understanding that what you see in the student today is connected to something from the past. That's for every one of us, every single one of us. What we do today has some kind of link and connection to our past and what we've been able to do in the past. What trauma-informed services and what I'm proposing today, what that does is it recognizes we're going to educate ourselves and we're going to be able to respond in such a way that de-escalates and decreases that impact on the students that we work with. So we're going to be sensitive. It means that we're going to be sensitive to all the ways in which our interactions are influenced by previous traumas. Now I wanted to say right here that we, I believe, are a campus in crisis and stress. And so we're not only dealing with the stress of our students, we're dealing with the stress of us too. And so I don't want for a minute to minimize the fact that our coping mechanisms are really being stretched at this time of our campus life and our personal life too. So I don't want to minimize that. I'm just proposing ideas and a model but I don't want any of it to discount what you might personally be experiencing, and because I'm asking you to kind of be aware of that and then be aware of the students. So it's sensitive to all the ways in which our interactions are influenced by previous traumas. It's an understanding of the impact that trauma has and the ways in which we may need to modify our response. The only thing we can control in our life is our response. And there's not a marker, but there's an equation, and I think it comes from 12-step models. Dawn, maybe you can help me with this because you are the drug and alcohol teacher, instructor, but it's if you take 3 plus 3 equals 6, I can't do that math. 3 plus 3 equals 6, with the first 3 being the event. You can't change an event. It just is. And the second 3 being your response. And then it equals the final 6, which is the outcome. So that's the equation that we're going to start with. So you can't change the event, and you can change your response. If you wanted to have a 7 in the way of a response, you can't change the first 3 because that just is. So the only thing you can change is your response. That's the only thing you have power over. That's the only thing you have control over. So if you want your interaction with your student to be a better reaction or a different reaction or a more positive reaction, then the only thing you can do to change that is your response. And then you might get a different outcome. Harriet Lerner wrote a book called The Dance of Anger that is a wonderful book if you want to kind of understand how to work with anger. And she talks about a relationship she had with her mother when she would walk in the door. Her mother would say the usual, and then she would respond with the usual, and before they knew it, they were arguing the usual. And it was pretty predictable. And then finally somebody said, well, have you ever thought about saying something different to your mother? So she did. And her mother said, what's wrong with you? You know, it's like, where'd my daughter go and who are you? And what she realized was that her mother then started saying something different. And it's kind of like dancing the two-step. You know, if you're dancing the two-step, the other person needs to also do the two-step. But if you suddenly do the three-step, they either have to stop dancing with you or do the three-step. So the only thing that you can do differently to make the situation different is to change what you say, change your response. In trauma-sensitive model, it recognizes that all behaviors are perceived as combative. Behaviors are often perceived as combative or reflecting a lack of motivation. Oftentimes we see our students as combative. We see them as really not caring. They really don't care about this. They just want an easy ride. They just want a free ride. But what they're actually doing is they're reacting to fear, and they're trying to survive. And sometimes, one of the things that we talk a lot about in my department is what is the backstory? What's underneath the behavior? What is underneath what they're doing? I can't always fix it, but sometimes it just helps me to step back and take a breath before I say something, because they don't know me well enough to be as angry at me and to personalize it to the degree that they are. Most of the time, the anger is institutional. They're angry at the institution. They're angry at a bigger picture, and they're in a survival mode. What are some of the survival mode places or survival places that students that you know go into? What are some things that happen for them?
Anger, frustration.
Okay. And what are they trying to survive? What is their fear? Failure. Mm-hmm. What else?
Not being understood.
Not being understood, which translates to there's something wrong with me. What else?
So self-esteem, then, if you say that.
Self-esteem.
They disengage.
They disengage. Yeah. Yeah. But do they really disengage? No, they just kind of simmer, don't they? Huh? Anybody else? Uh-huh.
They often become accusatory or blaming.
Blaming. Mm-hmm. And what? Uh-huh.
They feel alone in their situation.
They feel alone. And for many of them, what does this mean? Okay, what does it mean if they fail their class?
They lose their financial aid.
And if they lose their financial aid, what happens?
Can't survive.
They can't survive. They don't have a place to live. They can't buy food. They can't feed their children. They don't have transportation. That's huge. We're talking basic survival needs here. So oftentimes, it isn't really about the grade. Well, it is. But more importantly, or bigger, the bigger picture, it's about what that F means in the long run. So when we respond differently, sometimes we can help them to move beyond that. Sometimes we can help them with that. So this is how it works. And I'm not a physiology major or a biology major or anything, anatomy anyway. But this is the way I understand. This is a really simple drawing of the brain. And if you think of the brain as for the purposes of this, there's 3 distinct parts to the brain. And we've got, as you can see, we've got the reptilian part of the brain, the limbic part, which is the mammalian part of the brain, and then we have the neocortex, which is the higher functioning part. That's where our students need to be in order to really do well in school. They need to be up in that neocortex part of their brain. The neocortex doesn't fully develop until sometimes after the age of 20. And there's a new piece of legislation that started in January for former foster youth, extending their emancipation age from 18 to 25. I don't know if you're aware of that, but it used to be that foster youth were kicked out of foster care at the age of 18, and then they were on their own. What they realized is that the functions that they need to be able to do at that age required them to be in that higher functioning part of their brain, and it's not even developed yet. And so that was one of the arguments for extending their foster care options to the age of 25, where they can opt in and out of foster care. Many of the students that you're seeing are under 25. And so many of them are still learning how to plan. They're still learning how to look at choices and look at options and think ahead and analyze and problem solve. So, but if you go back to the reptilian part of the brain, this is the oldest part and the most primitive part of our brain. This is the part of our brain that acts out our instincts. This is the fight-flight, survival part of our brain. Then you take the next part, the mammalian brain, which includes the limbic system, and this is the emotional center of our brain. This is the part of our brain that focuses on our body's emotional response to danger. You know, the reptilian, we're going to be ready to go, but that limbic system says run, you're in danger, get out of here. And then the neocortex is the higher function of the brain. When we're in a place of stress and we go into that reptilian part of our brain, it overrides the neocortex. So have you ever heard people say when your stress increases, your IQ decreases? And that's when that reptilian limbic system is active, your ability to really problem solve. You ever heard people say, I was just so angry I couldn't see straight and I didn't know what I was going to say? Have you ever been so angry you didn't know what you were going to say? That's because you're in that lower part of the brain. So when our students come to us and they perceive a threat, that's where they go. They go into instinct. They go into that emotional part of the brain. They have a difficult time getting data from other places, and they have a difficult time working whatever data they get through their five senses. And what happens is the data they get gets worked through those past traumatic experiences. So when they come to you, they're not going to be as reasonable as they would probably like to be, and they're going to be just kicked right into that emotion and kicked in to whatever past experience they had, survival, low self-esteem, I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent, I'm going to, if I get a bad grade on this test, I'm going to flunk my class, which means I'm going to lose my financial aid, which means I'm not going to have any money, which means I'm going to lose my apartment, which means I'm going to be living on the streets. When in fact, they may have all A's, and this is one bad grade. But they're not going there. They're in that crisis place. Or maybe they go to the financial aid counter and they just need to fill out one form. But they're starting to panic because they don't know how to fill out that form. And if I don't fill out that form, I'm not going to get my financial aid, which goes down that road. So what do we do to be trauma informed? What it means is that we're not going to treat the trauma. We're not going to become their therapists. That's not what this means. We don't have to become their therapists. But what it does mean is we're going to do what we can to understand the behaviors, what their perception is, what is really going on, what do they think is really going on. There's some research. I'm developing an overall mental health program for the campus that is really systemic in that I want to have multiple ways that students can get their mental health needs met, and we can start to increase the number of students that are receiving mental health services. And there was some research, and it was called perceived academic success, or academic control rather. perceived academic control. And what this says is that when students perceive that they can be in control of their academics, they start to experience optimism. Now, optimism is closely connected to student success. Optimism is something that is what's called a state trait. It's state trait, meaning that you are either an optimistic person or you're not an optimistic person. It's kind of like you're either a glass half full person or a glass half empty person. And so when students come to us, they're either going to be optimistic or not optimistic. We can't always control that. But what we can do is we can help them think that it's an optimistically. In other words, we can't control their personality traits, but we can sometimes help them with their perceptions. And so what was found is that by instilling hope in students, by instilling positive self-esteem, by helping them believe in themselves, by helping them to see the glass half full instead of half empty at the moment, the page may not be completely filled out, but it's 80% filled out. That's optimistic. That's not, you haven't filled out this paper right. So by helping students, by taking that positive approach with them, oftentimes we can instill hope and we can increase their perceived academic control, that sense of control over my academics, that sense of control over my students' success, over my success. When we're looking at working in a trauma-informed environment, we respond in a way that helps students problem solve their problems. We don't always have to tell them what to do, but we help them to explore. What can you do to finish this? What can you do to change this grade in the future? What can you do to understand this in the future? What could I do to get through statistics? I got a really good tutor, half my age, because I was an older student, half my age, but he really instilled confidence in me that I could do it. Came to me, had his little flashcards, opened up his organized briefcase. I'm not organized. And he says, you can do this. I've had this instructor before. You can do this. I'm going to help you get through this. And it was like he instilled hope in me. And he hung in there with me. And every time I began to doubt my ability to understand statistics, he encouraged me and helped me remember the things that I just did last week in my tutoring session that were correct and that I remembered so that I could hang on to that and believe in myself a little bit more. We want to be aware of triggers that may spark a reaction in a student. And we talked a little bit about some triggers earlier. Can you think of any other things that might happen in a student environment, in your environment, that may trigger a reaction, a stress reaction in a student?
Enforcing rules.
Enforcing rules. And does that mean you don't have any rules, or what does it mean?
Well, there's ways, if you have, like, a student comes into the library with talking on a cell phone. Okay, you have to enforce the rule because there's other students around. But there's ways to approach the student that will make that a little bit easier to take than to just come down heavy with, that's not allowed in here.
Okay, so what would be a way that you could handle a cell phone when it's a rule? What are some ways that you could approach?
Well, first of all, inform the rules to the students
Ahead of time?
ahead of time, so they have an expectation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then if they break the rule, then take some action.
Okay. Uh-huh.
I have a rule that the first time it's a warning, the second time you buy donuts for everybody in class. And actually, they start looking forward to it. It's true.
And I have to say your students love you, and you do instill hope in your students. So.
Thank you.
And donuts.
And
donuts,
donuts.
yeah. We have
Of course,
some
they gain
diabetics.
10 pounds in your class, right?
Huh?
They gain 10 pounds in your class.
Yeah.
There'll be the leftovers.
Yes.
You and I have had this conversation. By the time they get to our doorway, they've been turfed 5 times to other buildings. And as an institution,
Yeah.
I feel really strongly that signage, there's no signage. There's so much construction, and we're not doing what we can to, they have to get to the bus. They don't have time to go to 5 different
Right.
offices to find the transfer center. And we're not doing a good enough job that's needless for them to have to, by the time they get to us, they're frustrated. And people are like, well, I don't know where it is. And then they get to us.
Yeah, have you ever wandered around a place trying to find something and you have an appointment time and the sense of angst, panic, anxiety? Yeah. Sweat, yeah. Yeah. And so, you know, that right there, by the time they get to that place, their stress level is really high. Yeah. Anything else that you can think of?
I know it might sound silly, but I work in admissions and records. I've been there for 9 years. I always try to approach students with a smile no matter what the situation, because right away it kind of disarms them, so to speak, and makes them comfortable, feel relaxed. Not all of them, but I just think if you approach them with a smile, it sure helps rather than kind of going up and being all like, hey, what do you want? Da, da, da. You know, if you're smiling at them right away and you're making eye contact with them, and I think that helps.
You know, the Sunday paper had an article about smiles. Did anybody see that? It's in that little section that used to be called the parade, but now it's called something else, you know? And it talked about there are two kinds of smiles. There's a smile with the muscles of your mouth, and then there's a smile with the muscles of your eyes and your mouth. They have to go together. And that there is a positive emotional outcome for you and others, particularly when you use your eyes as part of that smile. But if you can't use your eyes, it says, if you just can't go there, you just don't feel it, just use your mouth while you're driving. You know, just make your mouth, you don't even have to feel the smile, it's just the muscles. So, but I think that can really make a difference in other people, and they talked about that too. Uh-huh.
I think it's the tone of voice and the demeanor when you approach somebody even to represent them. A lot of the students that I see, when they get in trouble with the instructors, and I know the instructors have a hard job having to deal with all the students, I understand that. But also we have to understand that they also come from different backgrounds, they deal with different things, and sometimes they deal with a mental illness that they don't even know.
Yeah.
So it could be a trigger, the tone of voice, the way you talk to them, or the way you address them, and they're reacting to them, and you as a professor gonna say, you don't talk to me that way, you're disrespectful. Instead of saying, it seems to me that you're not in a good place, why don't you take a 5 minutes off and then come back and we can talk, instead of want them to do what you want them to do, because they get more fired up.
And this is Esperanza Maldonado, and she is the campus therapist. And so, you know, the mental health referrals get referred to my office, but the ones that really are, having the most difficult time, I refer to Esperanza. She's a licensed MFT and extraordinaire. And one of the things that I just want to take an opportunity to say is that there's a misconception amongst society that an individual with a chronic mental illness doesn't belong in college, when we know that isn't true. And we also know that the onset of mental illness is often in the late teens and early 20s. And for them to really receive services that are going to be the most effective for them, they need to have multiple hospitalizations. That's the way our system works. It's not really good, but they need to have multiple hospitalizations. So that means that they're going to cycle in and out of psychosis and difficulty and some of the problems. And what Esperanza works with a lot are students that tend to participate, they tend to do things like stalking another student, becoming really focused on something and you can't kind of pull them away, difficulty concentrating. And you have a student that you think is struggling with something like this, refer them to us. This is going, to have a trauma-informed response is going to de-escalate that, but they really need additional help in order to really work through, because we want them to get in the BEST program, on the BEST program, so that they can become successful students, because mental illness does not keep somebody from being successful. It does not keep somebody from getting a PhD. It just means that their road to get there might be a little bit more challenging than somebody else. Anything else? Any other examples? So back to the phone. I think, seeing a student with a phone, reminding them. You know, sometimes you can just say, what is the rule? What does the syllabus say about phones? What is our practice? And then, you know, the second time or the third time, I'm going to need to ask you to leave, or let's talk about this after class. I need you to put it away. And that's probably what I do. I need you to put it away. Let's talk about it after class. And then say, you know, what's going on here? It's possible that that phone being out is because they have a kid in crisis. And there could be an extenuating circumstance there, in which case I would probably say, this is what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you to sit by the back door. I'm going to ask you to put it on vibrate. And I'm going to ask you to step out of the room when you get that phone call. And so you don't, you know, because again, that's survival. They're going to be worried about their child. Anything else? I mean, you're the faculty. I teach part-time at Cal State Dominguez, and I teach social work, and I have them. Many of my students are on call, and I just want them to sit at the back. I put it in my syllabus. If you're on call and you need to answer the phone, sit at the back of the room so you can leave when the phone rings. Okay.
I want to talk about keeping in mind the students that are having a child in crisis. Often when it's a student that's relatively, you know, responsible and hardworking, my reaction is often to go home. I mean,
Yes.
You clearly can't concentrate. If somebody's in the hospital, some loved one is
Yeah.
sick, what are you doing here in the first place? And this is not your first priority.
And oftentimes the attendance policy doesn't really allow for that. But then sometimes I'll tell them, you get a freebie. Don't use your freebie for something unimportant. Save it for those important things that, you know. So that's between the instructors and the students, but looking at ways to remove that kind of stress. But I'm with you.
Because they're distracting other
Yeah.
students as well. They're drawing attention to themselves.
Yeah. And the same way with staff. If staff have children that are sick, they need to go home and be with their kids. Okay, stress trigger and behavior. Sometimes you'll find that the reminders are upsetting. Why would a reminder be upsetting to a student when you're reminding them? Reminding them over and over. Does anybody like to be reminded of things they forgot? So did I just trigger something for you?
I think it's in how it's said, how it's presented.
Yes.
I mean, we could use a words like, I just want to remind you this is coming up, or don't you remember, this is, so
Yeah.
it's how we present it.
And that's a real key. It's how we say it. It's how we frame it, how we present it is going to have a different reaction. If the presentation has a tone of, well, stupid, you should have known and remembered, then that's going to have a different response or an understanding that has with it a framework of an understanding. Triggers and stressors and behaviors, try to block out problems and not think about them. Avoidance, Derek, you mentioned that. They just disengage. A lot of times what will happen is they just want to block it out. They want to pretend like it doesn't exist. I see this a lot of times with paperwork that feels really overwhelming, financial aid paperwork that feels really overwhelming. Scholarship applications. Come in at the last minute. I want help with my scholarship application. It really feels overwhelming. What can we do to help students not feel overwhelmed about that? Any ideas?
Break it down into steps.
You said that, yeah.
Have a workshop.
Have a workshop, break it into steps. Help them, because when you look at that really huge mountain of things that need to be done, same way with homework and classes, okay, let's take one step at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 day at a time, and if you have students that are having difficulty with that, send them to us. I have 5 Masters in Social Work interns that are there to help with that. That's what they're there for. You can refer, we provide mental health services, but we also provide what we call school coaching, and that's what school coaching is. Let's look at the stress in your life. Let's break it down into steps. Let's break it down into parts, and it's a lot easier to handle part A and then go to part B than to handle the whole thing all at once, look at the whole thing all at once. Sometimes they feel numb or they don't have any emotions at all. And they just kind of are this blank slate. increased arousal to perceived criticism, the slightest little thing, and there's a huge overreaction. If you kind of have to look at, is this response the quote-unquote normal response for what just happened there, or is it really out of control, or overreaction? And overreact to something that seems really benign. It's kind of like, again, what really happened here? This doesn't really seem like that big of a deal to me, but the fact that it's a big deal to them. You don't ever say, that doesn't seem like that big of a deal. But you recognize that it is a big deal to them. It is a real huge stressor to them. And then let's take it again in parts. So when we have stress, because the control is often taken away in traumatic situations, we have struggle for power. In student life, we're seeing a lot of this. I just have to say. And the struggle for power, we want our students to have a voice. Derek and I are working really hard on helping our students to have a voice. We're working really hard on helping them to take steps that are going to be real. Oh, and Maya, forgot Maya. She's in the trenches too. We're working really hard to help them see these are the steps you can take in order to have a voice. Because your voice is important. We do not want to shut the students up. Their voices are really important. But we want to help them to do it in a way that's not a power struggle, but is an appropriate use of power. We're talking to them a lot about assertiveness and aggressiveness and what the difference is. And that an aggressive approach is probably going to turn people off and turn people away, but an assertive approach is probably going to get you the result that you, closer to the result that you want. We see this in a reaction response to a simple and appropriate no. Sorry, I can't do that. Let's talk about something else we can do. But when the door is closed, it's really, really difficult for them. Whenever we give a choice, we can decrease this reaction. And when we give a choice, we're really empowering them. We're giving them an option to make a decision. When we're breaking things up into steps, we're empowering them because we're teaching them how to do that themselves. Empowering them is the most important thing that I think we can do in our department, is because we don't want them to keep coming back to us. We want them to be able to be self-sustaining and to be able to take care of themselves in these situations. And we want to create choices. Choice creates an environment that helps to rebuild that sense of efficacy and personal control over their lives. We want them to really believe in themselves. Remember, the perceived academic control, the sense of hope, the sense of optimism. I really think that we can do that. We can do that just through a few simple sentences and a few interactions with our students and help them to be successful. The woman who introduced this concept to Esperanza and I, this is her slide. Her name is Kimberly Schultz. I want to give her credit for this really cool slide. But your response is key. You're going to have triggers. Students are going to come to you. You don't know what the trigger is. You don't know what happened. You don't know what was really said to trigger this. And then your trauma-informed response, non-trauma informed response, when it's a negative response, when it's one of those responses that we talked about before, when it's an insensitive response, when it's one that doesn't really recognize them, you're going to have a negative outcome. But when you have a trauma-informed response, you're going to have a positive outcome. So you have control over this. This is part of what you can do with them. So I've got a couple slides here. What we do matters. Punitive, negative. These are just some statements that were shared. You need to sign these forms as opposed to, we know that this is a really long form and I'm here to help you. First, you need to, and that's breaking that up into steps. See the difference in the way it's presented? It looks like you didn't follow directions. Is really different than let's read through the directions together. Now I know this is going to take more time, and that's what a lot of us don't have. I know it's going to take more time. when we used to help students with their FAFSA in our department, and I told the students, you can't do the FAFSA. You have to sit next to my student workers. I said, you can't do the FAFSA, it's personal information, you can't be doing it for them, you have to sit next to them and walk them through it. And I had a student worker say, that's gonna take at least an hour, and I could do it in 10 minutes. Yeah, but the next time you don't have to do it. See, you do it, you walk them through it, maybe twice, and then they know how to do their FAFSA. Because we have a lot of folks coming into our area that have not been in school for 20-some years, and they've been away from computers. We still have students coming into our area that say, I don't even know where to start with this computer. They don't have a clue. So you'll need to wait your turn. I hear that a lot. I want to say that a lot. You know, I'm sorry there's a line, but you know, I'm sorry there's a line. What can we do to help you with this line, or what can we do to help you wait? I know that Ross will show videos, and we put out magazines, and one year I went out and bought $300 worth of pizza. Well, Student Life bought $300 worth of pizza. I made the phone call. Because that was the year we converted to PeopleSoft. How many were here that year? 8 hours in line to register. Hot August, wasn't it? Horrible. Yeah. Oh, 10 hours? Yeah. We went out and bought water and pizza for people because it was miserable. But you know, what we can do to help to encourage them. I was in line. I had to get some documents from the courts in Riverside. It was really hot. I don't know what happened to the air conditioning in the building. But it was a long line, and I was waiting, and a woman came out from behind the window, and she came along the line to find out why people were there, to see if there was a form that they just needed to pick up, and she was going to get them the form. And she walked along and talked to every single person in the line. Now, it didn't help me because I still needed to be in the line, but it shortened the line, and it really made me think they cared. They gave the sense of really caring about the fact that we were there. And so that really made a difference. You know, in filling out the form, you have 80% of it done of what you need, and let's talk about other options and plans. So just kind of thinking about what your job is and what you might be able to do to help. And then the final slide, here's some of the benefits, and you can certainly read those. Any questions as in closing? Uh-huh.
Is empathy a learned emotion, or some people have more of it? And the reason why I asked, listening to the keynote speaker when it first started, and she was talking about, it was before her actually, they introduced her, where the person was there for a final but didn't know where they were going to live at. And I think some people lack empathy. You mentioned things add up to where they lose financial aid. We are in a crisis as far as our jobs, but we don't work in productivity, meaning our pay is not on how many students did you service today, how many phone calls did you answer today. Whereas their livelihood sometimes is on being enrolled in that class, attending that class, staying in that class. And I think, and I listen to people without empathy, but it makes me wonder, is it a behavior that has to be learned, or is it empathy disattached because you haven't experienced that? Or, you know, because I've noticed people have a lack of it.
I think it's harder to be empathetic when you're stressed. I think some people have more empathy than others. Some people have the ability to connect to somebody else's experience and to, in a sense, put themselves in that person's shoes and understand what it might feel like for that person in that situation. I think some people have the ability to do that more than others. You know, there's personality types and all kinds of things around that. But even the most empathetic person, naturally empathetic person, is going to have a difficult time doing that when they're stressed. Because when you're stressed, your mind is going through all of those emotional things that we talked about, and empathy requires us to kind of, in a sense, put ourselves aside and connect with this person's angst and uncomfortableness and fear and anything else that, you know, they might be presenting. So I think that taking care of ourselves is a really important part of it, and not getting burned out, and taking walks and getting up and taking a walk and you know, whatever we need to do. I have a picture of my granddaughter on my desk. You know, it's calming to look at Hannah and think about her giggle, you know. So, you know, you just have to find little things that kind of help you. And, you know, I know in our office, we'll get up and take a walk. We're on the Pacific Coast campus, and I'll walk over to horticulture and listen to the water flowing and hear the chickens. You know, I mean, just finding what that is for you and others, and then supporting your coworker. Supporting your coworker when they say, "I got to get out of here. I got to, please take over my phones for a minute. Take over my desk for a minute. I got to get out of here." Sylvia sends me an email. Need sparkling beverage. Or I've lost my cuteness today, and that's when she needs a break. She has to go take a walk, you know. So having those kinds of allowances with your coworkers, I think, is important. Anything else? Okay. That's it. Thank you.